It's just an identifier that can hold a value that can change, hence.
Right, okay.
Do we put the I++ before we close the assembly range?
Yeah, so that would be like the end of the block, so that would be like a block.
If you didn't, if the I++ was outside of the block, the while loop would never finish because I would never actually finish.
So what you've got here, you're incrementing I. Now I is what, like I said, is a variable. Now what's a variable? A variable is basically like a box, like Shane was explaining. It's a box that holds something inside it. It holds numbers. It would hold what type of number? It would hold a float number, just like £1.99, or it would hold an integer value, which is like 1, 2, 3. So it would hold some sort of value, whether it's numbers or characters, like A, B, C. So we'll define that in the beginning. In most languages, sort of like C, C++, Pascal, PHP, not PHP actually, but PHP is just slightly different, and Objective-C as well. In these three languages, at least in Java, you would need to define what that container will contain, like that I, what it would contain. So we'll need to say something like, oh, int, as for integer, I, and then we'll define that at the top here before we actually go into the while loop, and then we'll start doing the conditions if I is less than 10. But what we'll need to do as well is say I equals 0, so we initialize it. So this is where you initialize the I. So it's 0, and every time it just keeps adding 1 to it. In PHP, who's done PHP before? Yeah, in PHP you don't actually need to set a value or the data type. You don't need to give it like a data type like integer. You can just like put a dollar in front and put an I. As soon as you put the dollar, it's all recognized that's a variable, and that variable can hold pretty much anything. As you put a number in there, it'll say, oh, it's a number in here. If it's characters, it will say, oh, it's putting it, characters or string, or you can put between quotation marks when you're doing a string. Say, oh, this is a string. It's not a number here. So it will treat it like a string. But in this case, when we're covering a C, C++, and Objective-C, you would need to use these things. Now, the one thing that I forgot to actually mention, which I'm kind of jumped very quickly into, the 4 building blocks are pretty much the same across all the major languages, as far as I know. I haven't come across any language that doesn't have these building blocks, at least, right? And that's sort of these building blocks are common in non-object programming. The difference between non-object and object-oriented programming, the non-objects, just cover that, doesn't have any object-oriented concepts, but when you look at object-oriented programming, it's pretty much all this plus some objects as well. So we'll go into that shortly as well. But that's the while loop for you, right? So you've got a condition, and it does something, it keeps incrementing here. Next one that we can do is the do while. Well, the only difference is we'll do it the other way around. So we'll actually execute a block of code, and then it will check at the end. So we'll just move this down to here. So you put a do down here, and you put, say, while. Are you coming? I is less than 10. So you just basically put the condition at the end. So it would execute a block of code, and then it would test the condition right at the end. That's the only difference between that. Right. The next one, that's probably number 3 now, is the for condition. The for condition is very interesting, and it's the most popular loop that's used in programming. And the way you do that is you put a condition as well, you put it between brackets. Any conditions, we always use these brackets. We say something like int I, and we set it to 0, put a semicolon at the end, because that's one statement by itself, and we test the I is greater than, less than 10, and then we'll start incrementing the I as well. So it's pretty much what you see in the for loop, but it's all into here. So it will do the incrementing up here, it will test the condition, it initialize the I value, which is the variable, and then you can sort of like do whatever here. It can be printing out something, or connecting a database, collecting data from a database, doing absolutely anything here. And that's pretty much the for loop. Is that easy to follow?
Yeah.
Anything?
We don't need to I++ in that sense, huh?
I++
Okay,
is
that's right, that's at the top.
Yeah. Everything's good so far? You can ask questions at any time. If there's something that plays in it, doesn't sound too clear or whatever, I can sort of like elaborate even further. Next one, who knows the fourth loop type? What's the fourth? There's 4 different loops.
For each.
We said do while loop, and for loop.
The for each.
For each, yeah. Who knows about for each? Yeah? So you've covered for each. Alright, cool. So what's the for each used for? Give me an example.
For arrays, we use it
For
for
array.
kind of arrays.
Yeah.
When it goes through the arrays without any counter.
I think in most languages it's basically syntactic sugar that it compiles down to being identical to before, but it's slightly shorter
Yeah.
to write for us.
Yeah. It's popular in arrays as well as databases as well. So for each record in a database, do something with it. Or you might be like trying to increment the salary, all the staff in a database by 10%. So you can say, for example, for each staff salary, increase it by 10%. So basically the syntax for that is for each. And then you would say maybe like X in Y. Is that correct? Yeah? And then you would like, I don't know, do something to X in Y. So you say maybe X plus plus, add 1 to X or something like that. Yeah, it could be something as simple as that. Just basically adding 1 to value of X. So this was 2, it would be number 3. So that's basically the for loop for you. The third one, what's the third building block? Who knows? Just a guess. You guys have done programming.
It's the switchers.
Which one?
Switch.
Oh, switch, yeah, very good. Switch. Now, what's the syntax for the switch? You would put like, switch is very similar to if, but it works in some, you have to decide which sort of keyword to use, where is suitable, what's the application. So switch is very similar to the if condition. But here what we'll do, we'll say, for example, we'll ask the user, I'm going to write it as pseudocode so then we can sort of like generalize it, and then after that we can go into a particular language, how you would actually ask the user for inputs, whatever. I'm just dealing with that at the moment. So say you ask user for choice, for example. So between like 1 to 10, for example. And then after that we'll say switch I. So let's say, for example, we're storing the user's choice that he makes in this variable called I. So they'll just put like 1, 2, or 3 up to 10. And then we'll just start testing. We'll open the block and we'll say case 1. So you say the first case is 1. If they entered 1, print I, for example. Yeah? Print line I. So, and then you, after that, or you could do whatever. If they select 1, it could be like, withdraw from bank account some money or something like that, or deposit some money into the account. It could be whatever code. And at the end of that case, what we'll do a break. And what a break does, it actually exits the whole block of code. It will just come out of it. So it will do that block, and it will just come out. It won't test for the next case. Otherwise, it will just do case 2, and it will do something else, and it will say break. And at the end, after we say, so for example, we've tested all the conditions, we can say default. That's basically, if the user entered, let's say, for example, 11, we only take into consideration 1 to 10. So we entered 11 or any other value. So we want to sort of like say, okay, this is the default case here. Anything other than these choices, do something else and come out of the loop. Yeah? Is that easy to follow? Yeah? Does everyone know what the switch case Do you want to ask questions at the back or anything?
Yeah, what was the last thing you wrote as variable?
Default.
Yeah, underneath that, under the right?
Underneath it, you just whatever, you
Yeah.
put whatever code and then break as well. Just exactly the same as here, you put a break. But after each case, you put a break at the end. In this case, it's the default case, you put a break at the end and then you do a sum. You close the block of code. You open the brace, you close the brace at the end. That's very simple, that. What comes after the switch? Comes after the switch, who knows? What's the fourth building block? Most people don't know it, and I don't think we even covered it in Java. When we did Java, we didn't cover it. Yes? No? Alright, I'll tell you. So the third one we said the switch, and the fourth is called exceptions, or in other words, error handling. So when you handle errors, can't connect to the database. So this is called exceptions, yeah? Or error handling. Right. So what's that all about? Let's put that here. Do you wanna have a go? What's that? I'll leave it to it. Alright, okay, cool. Alright, so basically here what we'll do, we don't, like say for example dividing by 0. If you divide by 0, what happens? You'll create an error, isn't it? So the whole program will crash. So you want to avoid that. Or if your program depends on connecting to the database and that database is down, the internet's down, it's not connected to the database, the program will just crash. So what you want to do, you want to try something first. You want to try a condition. So you put the conditions here that you want to try out. And if it fails, if it works, great, the program will just execute the commands here and it will just carry on. But if somehow it fails, it doesn't connect to the database, what you want to do, you want to catch the error, and then you want to do something with it. You want to select maybe prompt the user, like a friendly message like, oh, you can't divide by 0, or the database is not available at the moment, or maybe we can't connect to the database at the moment, let's store the data into a file, or let's do something else. So the program will just continue, it would capture the error, and it would do a message here, and then the program will just continue running. It won't crash. If it's a division by 0, trying to divide the number, you'll test it here. If it works, gives you a value, great. We don't need to catch anything, we'll carry on.